Have you ever wondered why you have to wear a suit to go to an opera, but only need a t-shirt, a drink, and a bucket of popcorn to watch anime? As Pierre Bourdieu said, society's classification of arts is actually a division of power, which media are high culture and can discuss history, society, and identity, which media are just low culture, only able to entertain but not convey thought. It determines whose language is taken seriously and whose medium is allowed to speak of depth. Just like the theme of Magical Realism, you can find a whole row of Latin American novels on the bookshelf and see images of magic and history at film festivals. And there are countless scholars who study them, but almost no one will ask, can animation speak of magical realism? It is too entertaining, too fantastical, too shallow. But perhaps it is these characteristics that allow it to express more complex ideas. My research tries to cut into this blind spot. What I propose is not stylistic imitation, but theoretical repositioning. Can animation also be part of the cultural narrative of magical realism? Magical realism was first used by art critic Franz Roh to describe the dreamlike, realistic feature in paintings. In literature and film, it gradually evolved into a cultural narrative technique used to reveal the absurdity of repressed history, identity trauma, and social structures. Zamora and Faris pointed out that the key to magical realism lies in irrational naturalization. It allows magical elements to be integrated into daily reality, rendering logic invalid and allowing memories to engage. In film, Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth is widely cited. It reflects the historical trauma of Spanish Civil War through fairy tale narratives, proving that visual media can carry complex cultural memories. However, animation is rarely involved in this type of research. Even though works like Millennium Actress, Paprika, and When the Day Breaks clearly embody magical realism, they are often dismissed as experimental or stylistic, not as a carrier of cultural expression. This research addresses that gap, reframing animation not as a fantasy tool, but as a valid medium for recording and reconstructing cultural experience. In my animation, the protagonist has the ability to transform, switch forms at will, and break the camera lens in the civilian space. These surreal behaviors are not emphasized or explained, but embedded in the daily narrative as a natural existence. This treatment confirms the core feature of magical realism defined by Zamora and Faris, naturalizing irrationality in reality. In the same time, the narrative space of the work also carries the visual echo of history and memory. According to Ava, magical realism activities repressed cultural trauma through symbolic images. The protagonist walks into the experimental space in silence, facing the mutilated peers and the wanted order. Her actions awaken dormant life and collective memory. Animation visualizes trauma through the indexical movement of action. The space seems orderly on the surface, but is absurd and indifferent. The protagonist silences resistance through deformation, destruction, and touch, not only challenge the special order, but also responses to Kennedy's discussion on how magical realism breaks surface logic and reveals the absurdity of social structures. I try to use the medium of animation to practice the triple cultural logic of magical realism through rhythm, movement, and visual structure, naturalizing irrationality, visualizing trauma, and absurdizing power structures. This study re-examines the potential and significance of animation in the cultural narrative of magical realism from the perspective of genre research. Through the review of existing literature and the practical analysis of my own work, this video essay points out that although animation has long been classified as low culture and excluded from mainstream magical realism research, This medium actually has strong cultural carrying capacity due to its unique movement logic, visual language, and time structure. As demonstrated in this research, animation is not only a container of fantasy, but also a recorder of cultural experience and a tool for structure critique. In the future, if the study of magical realism hopes to truly break through the limitation of median boundaries and cultural hierarchies, it cannot ignore the theoretical value and practical potential of animation as a narrative subject.